be the teacher's assistant. I know there's something you can do to stop that from happening, but you can turn it off now. So. Is it? Oh, we should get this because it's such a beautiful. It'd be nice to meditate on. People can learn to chant it. It's a beautiful version. Thank you. I have to wait for the next. We have handouts. There's still one for you. I've kept you. We need another. We have one more. I'll be the keeper of the final one in case somebody after that being punished for. Okay. Enjoy, Ma. I guess that's what we'll have to do. Probably all right. Om Mangalam Gurudevaya Devya Matriksha Mangalam Mangalam Bhakta Vrindevyo Sarvalokaya Mangalam Om Stapakaya Chadharmasya Sarva Dharma Swarupine Avatar Varishtaya Ramakrishna Yate Namaha Om Sarashiva Samarambam Shankarachara Majamam Ashmarachara Prayantam Vande Gurum Paramparam Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Deva Maheshwara Guru Reva Param Brahman Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. This one most of you have learned. Om Bhadra Kālī Namo Nityam Saraswati Namo Namaha Veda Viranga Vedanta Stane Vidyastana Evacha Sri Guru Sri Ganesha Sharada Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om Tat Sat. Joy Ma. So picking up, last week did we, what was last? Oh, the funeral on the leg. The week before that, we were picking up from the Kālī Sahasranāma, where we last week, or 2 weeks ago, we had finished verse 28. And actually, we slowed down because like one name, Kashi, we spent the whole time on Kashi. On Ganga, we spent a whole day on Ganga. I think today we'll do a group of names kind of together. They reach together. And these, I printed 2 verses, 2 slokas, but we probably will only get to the first batch or the first group of names. Chant this first one. Maybe we can chant together. I'll chant it. I'll half line, and you can chant along with me. You can practice. Om Nītiḥ suruci Sunītiḥ suruci tuṣṭiḥ puṣṭir-dhṛtiḥ Kṣamā Vāṇī Buddhiḥ Mahā-lakṣmīḥ Lakshmi Nīla Saraswati. So this first. So actually, we'll split a little bit. The last name Nīla Saraswati. We're going to include that in next week's talk, because there's a natural break. As I'm talking out loud, I have to organize how I'm going to approach them. Most likely, that's my guess. Because in the following verse, it's Nīla Saraswati, then Saraswati and Matangi and Sharas. Anyway, there's a cluster of names that deal with Goddess Saraswati, and so this group of names, it kind of ends with Mahā-lakṣmīḥ, Lakshmi. So these kind of aim at qualities of the Lakshmi aspect of Ma. And so these first Nītiḥ, Sunītiḥ, Suruciḥ-tuṣṭiḥ, puṣṭir-dhṛtiḥ, Kṣamā. Many, and then Buddhiḥ, Vāṇī, Buddha, these names, they're found. We find them in the famous litany of the Chandi, the Yadevi Sarvabhuteshu. We find most of them. Let me show. So it's obviously a presentation of these as aspects of Ma or names of Ma. So, like it says Tuṣṭiḥ, Puṣṭir, these names are there. So we'll start with Nītiḥ. Actually, there's a mantra. Maybe I have it here. We use it as an opening mantra. When we're chanting the Chandi, it's one of the opening pranam mantras. Let me see if I have it. Om Namo Devye Mahādevye Shivaye Sratam Namaha Nama Pakritye Bhadraye Niyataha Pranata Smatam. This Niyataha is like Niyam, something like that. This name, Niti, is a similar, something like Niyama, right? Which means and so it says, salutations to the great goddess, to you who are ever auspicious, the primordial energy, sustaining principle. We bow to you with deep devotion. But actually, it means that we've saluted you properly, in order, with discipline, and then we start the recitation of the Chandi. And so, Niti means method, something like that. It also means conduct, and so a Niti could be there's Niti Shastra. There's one category of literature. These are moral principles, something like Dharma Shastras. We've heard what's the famous one? Madhu, Manu, yes, Manu Samhita, right? That's considered Dharma Shastra or Niti Shastra. Sometimes it's principles of behavior, principles of conduct, So Niti could be, in an English, trying to give an English translation, could be like morality, ethics, like that, but also system, right? It's not only it's our behavior and ethic, but also the process of something. Discipline, maybe that's a better word, discipline, right? Policy, or something like that. And so Ma's saying she's Niti, she is those principles, she's of behavior. But then the next word, Sunītiḥ, right? She's good behavior, right? And so then the following word, Suruciḥ, means good taste, right? So it's interesting, that was many years ago in our discussion on the Srimad Bhagavatam. We talked about Dhruva Maharaj, right? The boy saint Dhruva Maharaj, and I brought out actually something that's not from my own mind, as given by Swami Omananda, our Guruji, who has a very creative approach to thinking about these things. But also, he told me this very much encouraged our way of interpreting the text. Sometimes we're trying to find things that may or may not be there. Some things are obviously there. Right, like in the Chandi, where it says we interpret Dhumalochana to be ignorance when it means smoke-filled eyes. I mean, obviously it means ignorance. We're not, even though it doesn't say ignorance directly. We're not injecting something that's not there. It's most likely there, right? So similarly, the Suruciḥ, the interpretation of the story of Dhruva Maharaj, this interpretation I think is obviously there. So Dhruva Maharaj has his father. Anybody know who the father of Dhruva Maharaj? Uttanapada. So Uttanapada means one whose feet are above. Right? Uttana means above, and pada means feet. So you could say he's doing a headstand. You know this. What is that? What's the name for headstand in the normal or handstand? We have to invoke Giri here. Is expert at handstand. Yeah, something like that. So it's like this is similar. So your feet are above, and so this refers, if to give an interpretation that we think is justifiable, to all human beings, or at least to most human beings, because most human beings are born upside down, or there's some that are born. If you're born right side up, feet first, then that's dangerous. Also, my sister was born this way. It's a very dangerous birth. But usually the baby switches and then comes out head first. So we're born. So by saying Uttanapada, when you say Uttanapada is the father of Dhruva, now you're saying, you're giving a big interpretation. This is everyone's condition. And Dhruva, in a certain sense, is the soul who's born as a human being in a human body, upside down, feet above. He has so his mother, the king Uttanapada, has two wives, Sunītiḥ and Suruciḥ, right? And so we have to think about, so Sunītiḥ, no, hold it, I'm getting this wrong. Sunītiḥ and Suruciḥ. So Sunītiḥ means good discipline, good behavior, right? Good, and Suruciḥ means good taste. So Dhruva's mother is Sunītiḥ. So it's that which is born, he who is born, combination of a human body and good behavior, right? Righteous behavior, discipline, spiritual disciplines, moral disciplines. And another mother, in a certain sense, a competitive wife in the old system, and the mother to the senior son, right? The senior wife who gave birth to the first son, therefore the heir to the kingdom, is named Suruciḥ, good taste, right? So this is so we can give this. It's an easy interpretation. These are the human being, and we have two. We can be born in two different ways, or our spiritual life can develop in two different ways. Although we have a human body, are we born? Is our life the result of good behavior or of chasing after pleasure, good taste? Right, which, so this is a very big thing. And in the story, Dhruva Maharaj, he wants to go on the lap of his son, right? He goes on the lap of his father, right? And the competitive mother, his foster mother, said, "You'll never be on your father's lap, right? Only my son will be on the father." In other words, father's lap means successor, next king. And he got very upset because he wanted to sit on his father's lap, and his mother said, "No, you're a good boy, but that's where this is the dharma of the junior wife, and therefore the junior son, right? You never become heir to the kingdom, but in a certain sense, you'll never have the full affection of your father." This is the way the little boy took it, right? And so the boy said, "No, I will become king." And so he left home and went into the forest, and I shall do a tapasya, right? I shall meditate on Lord Vishnu, and he will make me king. And for a little boy, being king means love of my father, but I shall be the king. And so the Narada Muni shows up. We've told this story over 3-4 days many years ago. Podcast must be there. He appears after Narada Muni comes and discourages him. "Well, little boy, doing the forest like that, just go back home. You'll still be a rich king's son. You're still a prince. That's not a bad thing, right? And you left the love of your mother, the love of your father, all your friends, sitting here in the length, naked in the forest, meditating. No, I shall become king. I shall inherit the king." By that time, we got harder. And then Narada Muni was very happy, initiated Om Namo Narayana, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudeva. I gave him the mantra, the Lord Vishnu. And so meditating on that mantra, eventually Vishnu appeared before him, right, and gave him a boon. And the boon was, and so he says, "Ask a boon." He says, "No, seeing him, by that time he's become so purified by the holy name of Lord Vishnu, he just fell in love with God and didn't think of anything." But then Vishnu said, no. You had some sankalpa when you started. You have to what the fruit of your sadhana will have to be fructified. You will become king, right? No, I don't want to be. Doesn't want you want to not. It's good that you want to become a good king. Shouldn't want to become king. So he became a good king. And when I'll give you another boon over and above that because of your purity. That when you die, you'll become known as the pole star. You'll join the circle of the seven sages, the Saptarishis, as Dhruva. So we call the North Star or the pole star Dhruva in the Hindu tradition, right? And so he's always there because his purity and his tenacity, for his sadhana, not losing his, going through any austerity, any difficulty, any lack of pleasure, any lack of happiness, living a little 12-year-old boy in the forest, 8-year-old boy in the forest, right? Because of that, we look at him as our pole star. He's an example, right? And of course, if you're lost on the ocean, you're the pole star. You can figure out where you are by following the pole star. So Sunītiḥ and Suruciḥ, these two names are very often come together, right? In many hymns like that, and in the story it was because we're presented with these two choices: to do the right thing, the proper thing, in the right order, right, with decorum, gentleness, right, discipline, those type of stuff, or to do what's nice, right? And so you see in the path of the good and the path of the pleasant in that Kathopanishad. In the Kathopanishad, right, when Nachiketa asked Yama for instruction, he says there's two paths present themselves before humanity: the Shreyas and Preyas. It's been a while since you're studying this now. I'm not. Shreyas and Preyas, right? The path of the good, that's Shreyas, I think, right? And Preyas, the path of the dear or the pleasant, right? And he says they both have their reward, right? These are Upanishads. These are strong, hardcore texts, right? So they're not gonna mix words. It says one leads to bliss, other leads to darkness, right? It's like, but it's not that therefore you should never enjoy anything. You should always suffer, always renounce. That's not the message. But what's leading your life? What path are you on? Are you just trying to satisfy your external tastes, right? What feels good? Suruciḥ could be what feels good. That's a way of interpreting it. Suruciḥ. That's the way Guruji describes it. If that's your choice, or what is good, there's a difference sometimes, right? But here Ma says she's Sunītiḥ and Suruciḥ, right? She's everything, right? She's Mahamaya and Mahavidya, Avidya and Vidyamaya and Avidyamaya. She's the full spectrum. She's everything, right? She's also all the pleasures in the world. She's that. Even the pleasures of the world that take us away from our spiritual goal. She's that. Right. If you go away from your spiritual goal, where have you gone? You haven't gone anywhere. She's right there. She's everything. That's what these names are. That's what every list of thousands and thousands of the 1,000 list of 1,000 names are showing. There's nothing that's not her. Ultimately, Swami Omananda, one time he was saying, you can challenge. I give you a challenge to God, to Almighty Mother, right? That she shall throw me from her universe, and show me from her presence. I challenge her. Impossible. She said, this is not something to do. It is not a thing. It's because there's no place where she isn't. And therefore, she cannot throw me from her presence. Right? And I can also challenge myself. I shall leave Ma's presence, forget Ma completely. Impossible. Right? So she's also Suruciḥ. Right? But they lead to a different goal. Right? So she's the path of the pleasant and the path of the good, the path of discipline and I don't want to use any word we use would be loaded words. We don't want to use trigger words, you could say. I don't want to upset anybody about anything. Right? Be very, very careful. Don't get sued or anything. Don't give me a bad Yelp review or anything, if I say the wrong thing. But actually, that's one thing. So I think this name, Nītiḥ, Sunītiḥ, Suruciḥ, this cluster of names has to imply that, right? But these other names, tuṣṭiḥ, puṣṭir-dhṛtiḥ, Kṣamā, Buddhiḥ, Lakshmi, these are names or qualities or gunas of Suruciḥ. These are, because it's not that we have to suffer, right? It's not that we can never satisfy our desires, right? Because if you didn't satisfy your desires, you wouldn't eat, right? If things didn't taste good, you wouldn't eat, most likely, right? If things weren't beautiful, you wouldn't look. Right, the senses. I mean, we wouldn't thrive, right? So pleasure is a legitimate goal, and actually, even in the four goals of life, there's Kama, Dharma, Kama, Artha, Moksha. Kama is one of pleasure, satisfaction, right? Artha, wealth, prosperity, success, fame. These are legitimate goals, right? But the question, and we've brought this up in the past, this is a wonderful little in Religions of the World by Huston Smith. Huston Smith's a famous book, The Religions of Man. Then he rewrote it as The Religions of the World. He says in the section on Hinduism, he says Hinduism says, he's making a very bold statement, you can have what you want, right? This is the thing, and if you want pleasure, do it. But even suruci, get good pleasure, good taste, but with discipline. If you have proper discipline, you can also get what you want. If you do to get anything, you want a good job, you have to become. I mean, we have a friend who wanted to get a job and come to America, right? And Guruji was telling him, says, you have to first go to school, get some qualification where you'll be wanted, right? There is a system to it. You have to, and then from there, a company may want you. You have to have, or learn yoga, and you can go and do something where. But just like I should get a job. Why should you get it? I mean, if you want the success in the job, you need to go through the disciplines, Sunītiḥ, to get to suruci, right? Even to get regular, not regular, but to be successful and to satisfy your desires, to satisfy your ambitions, right? Requires also so much discipline, right? Sunītiḥ and suruci, and so in the Huston Smith makes this argument that you can have what you want, but we should always ask ourselves, what do we really want? And of course, the problem is we don't always know what we want, right? So we want to be happy. Of course we want to be happy. That's ultimately the goal. So we want to be happy. We want to we're pleasure-seeking animals, psychologically, neurologically, but we're also pleasure-seeking. The soul in Tantra is a pleasure-seeking entity. We're born in bliss and we're seeking bliss. Right, we want happiness. We want satisfaction. We want the next thing, tuṣṭiḥ, puṣṭir-dhṛtiḥ, these other qualities. We want satisfaction. We want the we'll get to that name, satisfaction. So even to satisfy our desires requires so much discipline, right? And you see, if you're not disciplined and you're only going after trying to satisfy your desire with no discipline, you're not going to satisfy your desires. Right, and you won't refine yourself, and even to go maybe beyond what our desires are, to what we find out we want. Maybe we want something more. Maybe we'll want something more. Maybe you don't know, what's next until you get to a certain vista. You're on a path, you don't know what's around the corner. I'm on this path. I'm doing like that. But once you walk a little bit, then you see the next thing that's possible. And so, it's like we want to satisfy our naturally. If you satisfy your desire, then what? Maybe, if the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's been since high school for this one, but right, Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? I think that's like right. That whatever your needs are, like to somebody who's hungry or somebody who's starving. Swami Vivekananda says at the Parliament of Religion, to preach religion to a hungry man is an insult. Right, his need isn't philosophy, right? Isn't Triyantra Puja or something like that. Okay, it really is, but that can feed everybody. But his need is food, right? So whatever the Amber, I still remember Mr. Nas, my high school psychology teacher, many years ago. One of the few teachers' names I still remember. My brain is not the same it used to be. But he says, so Amber, you have what is it? Survival, then love and belonging, and there's all these. I forgot the 7 stages. And final was the top one, self-actualization. That was like remember this transpersonal psychology. I forget what the school of thought that he was representing. But so he asked, so what's the most important? What's the most important need that needs to be satisfied? And of course, I mean, I was already a spiritualist. I knew Bhagavad Gita. And well, obviously, Sri Ramakrishna said the goal of life is God realization. Right? And if you don't satisfy the goal of life, you live your life ultimately and utterly in vain. So this is what this is a good thing to get when you're young and enthusiastic. Spiritual God realization is the goal of life. It's the only goal of life. And if you don't succeed, you failed in your human birth. That's very strong. That's a big teaching of Sri Ramakrishna. And so I was like that. I immediately rose my hands. Like I couldn't say God realization. I would say, well, self-actualization. He says no. He corrected me. The unfulfilled need is the most important one. It's the same idea. Don't preach religion to a hungry person. Give him food. Then maybe education. Then maybe whatever the next step. So so in the four goals of life, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, the kama and artha, satisfying one's desires and ambitions, and artha means material success and financial success, material success, political, all those the wealth, in the category of wealth and prosperity and influence, those have to be led by dharma in that thing. If led by dharma, they lead to moksha. If not, according to the Gita, triple are the gates to hell: lust, anger, and greed. Kama, and he says basically, kama, artha are gates to hell, right? And anger is frustrated, the lust and greed, right? That's so lust, anger, and greed are the same type of thing. If led by what's dharma? Sunītiḥ, right? Through culture, through consideration, through education, through tradition, right? You can satisfy your desires in a way that's not against society, that's not against your family, not against your morals, your religious morals, your personal morals, your culture, your society, your group's morals. You're not hurting people. All these type of things you have to consider and therefore it's not suruci only, suruci through sunītiḥ, right? That is an important point, and that could lead. So it says then it doesn't automatically lead to moksha, but it can lead to moksha, right? Usha, sometimes when Usha is reluctant to talk about her own spiritual life, and I'm reluctant to talk about other people's spiritual life, but it's something she often says. Or she said this on camera and things. So I repeat it in interviews and things like that, podcasts and interviews. She says I was always looking for the highest pleasure, the highest excitement, right? She worshipped excitement, right? And therefore, at an early age, she became an actress, right? And she was Hollywood parties, the whole thing, people, all the people that, of course, now it's the last generation of really famous actors. These are her friends. You go there to hang out together, play softball together. And you can see at a certain point that was like the peak of her life is to be, she said her ideal was James Dean, be super famous and die young, the whole world cry for you. That ideal is because that's what could be more exciting like that. Until she attained at a certain level that, at least the beginnings of that, and the parties are boring, right? And the people are boring, right? The boring people are boring parties, and then she on a walk one day, right, to get out of a crowded apartment full of starving artists who are now super famous actors. She took a walk and stumbled across the Vedanta Society in Hollywood. And if you see that, if from the front, you see it looks like a little mini Taj Mahal thingy there. And she walked in, and it was just really, outside it's a pretty little building, but inside it's kind of a boring. This is a very beautiful. It's visually stimulating. Vedanta Society is not visually stimulating. It's very it's elegant, especially at that time. It was understated elegance, very simple, austere elegance, gray carpet, and simple, very beautiful, simple shrine, small pictures. Sri Ramakrishna, how it is. It's still roughly the same way now, although they've redesigned a little bit, right? But what she found there, she says, is way more exciting than the greatest Hollywood party. And then what to speak of now? Her life is getting more and more. You can searching for suruci, the highest taste, the best taste. You can keep moving forward and forward and forward, and lesser tastes fall away. There's a verse in the Gita I didn't think about until just now. Actually, there's a book the Hare Krishnas present. It's a cookbook, The Higher Taste. You've seen this book. It's very famous. A little book. Half of it's a cookbook. Half of it is convincing you for vegetarianism from different various sides. It was very influential in my young life, right? But it's based upon a verse in the Gita that says that I have to get it right. One can be I'm summarizing now because I don't remember the verse right now. One can refrain from engaging the senses from sense objects by discipline, right? You can give it if something but the hunger for them, the taste for them, the hankering for them remains, right? You can see I may like something, tea or coffee or whatever it is, chocolate or any person, thing, anything. And I can, by discipline, I can restrain myself, right, and not eat that food. It's not going to be very difficult for me not to eat one thing I like to eat, but theoretically, as a thought experiment, I could theoretically not eat something I want to eat, or refrain from doing something I don't want to do. I want to do or something like that, right? But the taste is still there. You can see you come. Maybe you don't succumb to it, but through your desire is still there. Temptation, something like that. We may use that word, right? But then it says, but one becomes fixed when one experiences a higher taste, right? When one gets a higher taste in the thing that's attracting, then the lower taste naturally falls. That's the idea of the book, right? That it's like we're in a world of food that we're accustomed to eating, but if we had prasadam, if we had pure sattvic food, slowly it's like, oh, this is actually better. It's not a huge, maybe it's a little discipline. I grew up eating meat, or I grew up eating the drink like that, and you have a tendency for it, and our hankering is still there. But tasting something higher, the lower taste naturally falls away, right? This is the idea. So so even the search for happiness, the search for pleasure, not better word than the word for pleasure, can be leading you from lower to higher, from gross to subtle, from gross to more and more refined, right? So even Suruciḥ she is Suruciḥ, not only in the sense of like everything you see is her, like there's no word she is not, but also searching for her as the highest taste is also a way to go forward. So in Vivekananda Jnana Yoga lectures, he says that we can like a very simple, gross person, not it's a judgmental language, but he's categorizing, so it's going to be a little bit judgmental. He says, but it's like somebody who's just in their body, right? They can enjoy food is really good, right? A good meal, a good whatever it is, a good steak or whatever, just something like it's like that. But he says that, but to a philosopher, right? It's like eating whatever you need to eat, you eat quickly, right? You get more pleasure from the contemplation of ideas, right? But to most people, philosophy is not only difficult; it's difficult. We can't get it, but it's also boring because we're not at that refined. But the more refined whatever the thing is, even food, the more refined your taste buds. Somebody who that a regular food regular fast food won't satisfy you, right? So it goes. So anyways, the idea is that by Sunītiḥ you get higher and higher taste. But by Sunītiḥ you get Suruciḥ, right? So now Suruciḥ is interpreted not just I want good taste. Suruciḥ is better taste, divine taste. Because the term Su usually means it's not just good, right? But it's in the devotional literature, Su is like a divine taste, right? And therefore Sunītiḥ is not just good discipline; it's divine disciplines. Nītiḥ is discipline, morality. Sunītiḥ is divine disciplines. So that's different, right? You could do what you're supposed to do because you're supposed to do it by culture, by family, by education, by like that. But Sunītiḥ you can do because like you can be nice to people because if you're not nice to people, you're going to be miserable. It's real simple. Even if you're selfish, you have to be nice to people. Because if it's like because otherwise people aren't going to like you, and you're not going to be happy, right? At least you can pretend to be nice to people. But what if you actually like people? Then it's not just Nītiḥ, it's Sunītiḥ. What if you actually it's like we're told in the script you have to treat people as if they're God or if they're so like. But what if you actually saw them as such, right? Then the Nītiḥ becomes Sunītiḥ. It's another way of interpreting. Both is like it's good behavior, but like divine behavior means. It's a much higher standard. Nītiḥ, Sunītiḥ, Suruciḥ. These names I think are very nice. Tuṣṭiḥ, puṣṭir-dhṛtiḥ. See, Tuṣṭiḥ, puṣṭir-dhṛtiḥ. These three names are also found. That's 216, 217, and 218. In the Lalita Sahasranāma, these names are also there. Tuṣṭiḥ is 443. And the next one 444, and then it skips a few, and 446. So they're right there also, right? And they're all three of them are in this Yadevi Sarvabhuteshu, Yadevi Subhutesu, Tuṣṭirupena Samstita, Yadevi Sarvabhutetu, Puṣṭirupena Samstita, Yadevi Dhṛtirup, and actually the next one Kṣamā also, Kshantirupena Samstita, Here it's Kṣamā, same word is there. But we'll start with these tuṣṭiḥ and puṣṭiḥ. Tuṣṭiḥ means satisfaction. So you see that relates to suruciḥ, right? You have good taste, or desire for good taste, right? And if you have a desire for good taste, hopefully your desire will be, you'll become satisfied. You fulfill your, maybe that's the word, fulfill your desire, right? But you fulfill your desire is not always to be satisfied. That's the problem, right? Sometimes the yogic texts and Buddhist texts also say that the desire, trying to fulfill your desire leads to suffering. Not even fulfilling your desire will lead to suffering. You have to kind of analyze a little bit harshly, but we sometimes do this. It's good self-talk. Careful, see what's really going on in the mind. It's like if you have a desire, right, and then most desire, Buddhism says desire, the cause of suffering is desire. They analyze it this way, right? Why? Because if you desire, most desire is not going to be fulfilled. So unfulfilled desire leads to suffering. So suruciḥ, good taste, but no satisfaction, means good. You're hungering for something good, but you're not being satisfied. That leads to suffering, right? And so the fact is, most of the time we're not going to get satisfied, whatever our good tastes are. And if we do, it's going to be very momentarily. So it's not going to last. That's the second type of suffering caused by desire. Is there's Buddhism by the numbers. Second category of suffering is that even if if your desire is satisfied, it's not going to be permanent, and therefore you're going to lament. You're going to suffer. And you can see in any big thing, even if you get a big success in job and you get the big high, and then even if you get it, the high won't last, and probably the job won't last. But even the high won't last. Pretty soon it's not a big deal. I was excited, I'm proud, and told my mom she's proud of me, and then you're back to normal. It won't continue, right? But another quality is that it does, and if it does last, it won't be satisfying. If it is satisfied, it won't last, right? And if it's satisfied, even if it lasts, it's not satisfying, right? It's like I really want whatever I really want something, and I attain it, and it lasts, but it's not that great, right? Once the desire is satisfied, it doesn't give the same pleasure, right? But really, it awakens more, and the Gita and the likes, it awakens more. It's given an example as pouring ghee into a fire. By pouring ghee into the fire, it's not the way you put out a fire, it's the way it increases. So it keeps desires going, keeps frustration going. And so the search after Sunītiḥ, of suruciḥ, is not tuṣṭiḥ. It's not satisfaction, right? But let's say it is, right? And it should be. We should be satisfied, right? Although this is the way we go from actually by being satisfied, then maybe we think, maybe there's something more, right? Only by getting what we want, maybe we'll want something more, right? So this is not a negative thing, tuṣṭiḥ. So materially, we usually think of a tuṣṭiḥ as fulfillment of a desire leads to satisfaction. That's the definition. That's external. In the external world, materially, we have a desire, we satisfy a desire, we get the satisfaction desire, and we become, at least maybe temporarily, maybe not permanently, not perfectly, we become satisfied. Our desires become satisfied. But spiritually, we see that has not much value. It can't have much value, right? So spiritually, it changes that you get a fulfillment not from fulfilling, satisfying desire. You get fulfillment or satisfaction by not having desires. That's a different thing, right? So that, and you can see that, and spiritual life is full of such language, right? When your desires cease or succeed, secede, go down. What the word? Maybe it's not a word. It's a word in my own. Whatever. It's one of those words. See, my desire to be thought of really smart is not. It's very frustrating again. I had it for a little bit in the last few minutes, but now it's gone. Secession comes with it. When we're free from desire, then we're always satisfied. right? That's one thing, that you're not dependent on fulfilling a desire to become fulfilled, right? So that's a whole different thing. But that comes from fulfilling a certain type of desire. That comes from a certain type of suruciḥ, a certain type of taste, right? You're not free from desire unless you have a certain type of satisfaction from a certain type of inner experience. Otherwise, you won't be free from desire, right? Because we're pleasure-seeking creatures. So that's another thing, that tuṣṭiḥ comes not at one level from fulfilling our desires, and one level from not having desires to be fulfilled. And that only happens when deeper, more profound desires are fulfilled, right? When I think you understand what I'm trying to say, hopefully. The Upanishads say again and again that the Atman lacks nothing, right? And so we are searching, in a certain sense, our search for fulfillment is a search away from the self. The self doesn't lack anything, right? And so the fact that we're feeling a lack of something means we can't be happy. That happiness is only in the self. So, such verses often say. There's a verse that says happiness is only in the infinite, right? And therefore seek only the infinite, right? There is no happiness in the temporary, in the limited. Seek it only in the bhuma, in the infinite, right? But when we have no desires and we feel that happiness because we're not different from the infinite, that's something I do. Tuṣṭiḥ, yādevi sarvabhuteshu tuṣṭi-rūpena samstita, and then puṣṭiḥ. So puṣṭiḥ, it means nourishment, right? She is also nourishment. So she's happiness. She's a search for happiness. She's good discipline. She's all disciplines and culture, right? She's satisfaction and she's nourishment. And so here I'm quoting a few Upanishadic verses, and we have a Vedantic lens, naturally, kind of the way yoga and Hinduism has been presented through a Vedantic lens, right? But this is a tantric text, right? And so we have to take the goddess in a different way also. That yes, the happiness is, but the one, the supreme one, who's lacks nothing, has become everything, and everyone, and in the process has become all the changes, birth. Although she doesn't die, right? She also is born, grows, declines, and dies, right? Both at the same time, never changing, right? She's Shiva and Shakti. She's Brahman and Shakti, right? Being and becoming, I guess you would say, in Tantra, Shaktism especially. So the tuṣṭiḥ is important. It is she is nourishment, and also this is the goddess tradition. She's also the goddess is prosperity, is fertility, is the earth. We've used all these names in the last few weeks. We've been discussing all these names. She's also like nature at its most dynamic, and so nurture is a very important thing. So she is that nurture, and also she's mother, and the mother is nurturing. That's one of the definitions. When we think of, when we say, oh, she is God, or God is her. God is we think of God as mother, right? What do we mean by that? One of the things we mean by that, one of the is that she's mother is one where everything is existent as the womb of everything. So she's the supreme reality. She's the one that, the source of everything, that's who gives birth, or is the source of everything. Right, and also another thing we call about mother is that she is the one that nurtures, right, that cares for everything, right, and so she cares in through all the stages of development, physical development, spiritual development, and so Sri Ramakrishna would say, and Holy Mother would say, that Kālī is not your stepmother; she's your actual mother, right? She's not just like a mother; she's not a mother; she's your mother. Your mother wants the absolute best for you. She wants you to thrive. She wants you to grow. She wants you to be happy. She wants puṣṭiḥ. She wants you to be nourished and grow and bloom and blossom and thrive, right? And we have to think of her as that type of, not that type of mother, as our mother, right? Direct mother. She's not a stepmother. Is somebody who's like your mother, right? She's a mother, but somebody else's mother, really. But Thakur always said she's your real mother, not your stepmother. And real mother here, not just the womb of all existence and the source of everything and the first thing, but that she has she's infinitely benevolently disposed towards you. I think of it this way, right? Holy Mother. She one time made a statement, or somebody made a statement, or disciples about her. I'm forgetting, but he says that a mother. The difference between Swami Chaitananda asked a disciple of Holy Mother, "Tell me something about Holy Mother." I have a mother. You have. We all had mothers. I had a mother. I love your mother. What made her? What's different about her? Right? And she says, "Well, your mother had so much love for you, right? But not the same love for everybody. She has love for because you came from her womb, not everybody else came from. Now, other children she may love in a general way, but literally you came from her. You're says like Holy Mother saw everything in that way. She's everyone's. She says I'm everyone's mother, not in a general way, in a direct way. Not just I'm nobody's stepmother. I'm your actual mother. She felt every. She said not only every disciple, every devotee, every being. But she says there's nothing in this universe that doesn't have my love, right? Because she felt she gave birth to them. She was a divine mother, or felt she was a divine mother, right? So that's the mother. That's puṣṭiḥ. She's nourishing. It's like we breathe because in Kashmiri Shaivism, they have the thing, every time you breathe in, God's breathing out. And therefore we breathe in. And we breathe out, God breathes in. It's like his breathing, her breathing is our breathing, right? Everything, our very existence, our very life, our very growth is his or her reality. She's puṣṭiḥ. Nītiḥ, Sunītiḥ, surucis-tuṣṭiḥ, puṣṭir-dhṛtiḥ. Dhṛti, Yādavi sarvabhuteshu, dhṛti rupena samsita is also there. Dhṛti means like secure, right? And found like a foundation, but here it means a little more personal. It means fortitude, right? Security and strength. So you can see these are part of tuṣṭiḥ and puṣṭiḥ. We want security. We want as we grow is this type of thing. Also, like there's other ways to interpret. Dhṛti. There's all these. We know the Dash Mahavijjas and the Ashtalakshmis and the Navadurgas. There's also 16 matrikas, and one of them is in a different list of tantric categories of yoginis and dakinis like that. In the 16 matrikas, dhṛti is one of them. So there's dhṛti, puṣṭiḥ, and they're all considered forms like that. But so Nītiḥ, Sunītiḥ, surucis-tuṣṭiḥ, puṣṭir-dhṛtiḥ. Then Kṣamā. And in the Chandi, Yādavi sarvabhuteshu, Kshanti rupena. That KSH, not the Shanti as in peace. Kshanti with a K. I don't know if I can get it right. So that means forgiveness, right? Jayanti Mangala Kālī, Bhadra Kālika Durga Kṣamā Shivaratri. So you are she who is forgiveness. And going back to a interpretive principle in describing these things, when we say "Oh Ma" you can say "Oh Ma" is forgiving. We can say, and in Western religion, that's a very big deal. God has to be because we've done apparently something really bad, and therefore we requires, or we feel it as such, or we've been told as such, and requires, and without a doubt, God is infinite divine qualities in an infinite level, most forgiving, right? But so we say, oh, Ma is strong, Ma is peaceful, Ma is loving, Ma is angry, right? All these names are there, right? But we also say these are actually qualities. These aren't her qualities. She is all qualities. These aren't her qualities. So she is anger. She is love. She is happiness. So she is forgiveness, not just forgiving, right? Because Abbot George, when somebody made a statement about how God's, how are sins forgiven, and he was asking some question when he was something. He says that God's not angry with you. God may be angry with you. I don't know. I don't know you personally what your past is. Maybe God's really legitimately angry with you. I hope not. And God, I hope she's obviously very forgiving. So I hope you work it out. Right. But she is forgiveness. So it's not, and you could see, we don't need to be forgiven. We need forgiveness. She is that divine quality, right? In the prayer of St. Francis, what is it? Not really written by St. Francis, but in his mood, right? It is in forgiving that we are forgiven, I think is the word, right? I think it is in dying that we were born to, it is in giving that we receive, it is forgiving that we are forgiven. So it's the forgiveness itself is divine, right? And we're forgiving when we forgive. In the commentaries on the Chandi, on this word, Shanti or Kṣamā, right? They're often trying to think why is it brought out so much? Because this is pre-Western religion, pre-Christianity, so it's not the obsession with forgiveness as we usually has entered the religious mind now. This is independent of that. I'm not sure if it's pre that, but independent of it. May not historically, the text may not be older than Christianity. I don't know, but the idea is independent of it. He says, because the thing is that when you have resentment, this is the classical commentaries on this verse. When you have resentment, it creates a samskara, right? A resentment itself is samskara, and repeated as you brew. And we all know this, when we're resentful to something, we brood on it. At least I brood on it, right? And you repeat it again and again, and that becomes a vritti. Right, that becomes a samskara. It becomes a vritti repeated. It becomes a habit, and then you're stuck, and you don't have freedom, right? And so and you can see that for anything this is the case, and so Kṣamā, Kshanti, forgiveness is in the yogic interpretation of the Chandi, this quality is. It's almost too simple to say. It almost hippie-ish to sound. Sounds like it's letting things go. Right, because when you fixate on it, you create a knot in the mind, and just becomes a samskara. A vritti becomes a samskara. A samskara becomes completely colors your life, and it can follow you. And the samskaras can follow you from birth to birth, right? So as the tradition understands, right? So you can get a knot that's very hard to untie, and for something, even if it's really bad, if you let it go, then you're free of it. Right, and it's not that by forgiving, that we forgiving others. It's not that necessarily that we accept what people have done, not like that. But we understand. But it's not that it's not agreeing with, right? But it's a large mind perspective, a large. What we want to be free of it, and also it's a type of understanding like we're all struggling, and maybe we're further on. Some people are really struggling and acting out of extreme confusion and pain and closed-heartedness that people do really evil, horrible things. But most people don't do really evil. Even people who do evil, horrible things aren't foundationally evil, horrible people. They're like us. Struggling people with samskaras, right? Who knows for how many lives have we've conditioned our response. Sometimes you see like our response, I get a response, I'm like going, who knows where that response came from? I'll figure that, it may take lives to figure out that one. Weird response to something, who knows? There's no simple answer to anything. We're all complicated beings with complicated pasts and complicated reactions. And so forgiveness, this divine quality, which is divine itself. And you can see there's in the act of forgiveness or being forgiven, there seems to be a divine power there, right? It's a huge healing power as a samskara, a deep samskara is untied. But as a yogic practice, always just not to hold things, just to let things go, right? Let it go, that type of thing. Then you don't have to create a knot that may take lifetimes to untie. So Kṣamā, one of the names of Kālī. During Durga Puja, this mantra, the Jayanti Mangala Kālī, we think these are all names of qualities of Kālī, but there's a part of the puja where each one, they're actually different goddesses. There's Bhadra, there's Jayanti, there's Kṣamā, there's Jayanti Mangalakali, Bhadra Kālī, there's Kapalini, there's Durga, the Kṣamā, Shivadatri, there's Swaha and Swadha. These are all different goddesses, right? So she's also these goddesses, right? There's a goddess of forgiveness like that. Also, just remembering by association, Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother said, and Sri Ramakrishna said, if you've done something, but what about like the idea we're seeking forgiveness from God, right? That's a motivation for much of religious consciousness, right? Sri Ramakrishna said, just say, Lord, I won't do it again, and then be free of it, right? Then it's gone. There may be a karmic residue of the action, there's cause and effect, but actually that's sufficient. Right, it's like, but the problem is we say, Lord, I won't do it again. We do it again because of samskaras. But if you can say such a thing, honestly, it doesn't need more than that. You don't need to make it. It's important. Obviously, it's important. If we've done something wrong, that guilt, and maybe real psychological guilt or real guilt that has a response to it, a karmic response. Just say, I won't do it. Sorry, I won't do it, and be free of it. And then Holy Mother said, tell Sri Ramakrishna, sorry, I won't do it. I won't do it again. He says, asking such a being like him, she is Kṣamā. I mean, these are divine qualities. These are immediate response. That's sufficient. No need to. We make such a huge deal over these things, right? We've done it for thousands of years. Sorry. Right? It can take 1 second, right? It's like of course it's. But we hold anger towards others, and then we feel guilt of our whatever. We live up to somebody else's standard or our own standards, and sometimes legitimately. Not that everything we do is great, right? There's we all make mistakes, and we feel bad, and sometimes we should feel bad about them. We shouldn't feel bad forever about them, right? It shouldn't define us and define our relationship with others and define our relationship with God and everything like this, right? Just let it go. Kṣamā, she is forgiveness. So then the next name, Vāṇī. And I'm going to just briefly say, because I'm going to fold Vāṇī into next week's discussion, because this is a precursor to the name Saraswati, right? Vāṇī means speech, right? And so this is, as the next cluster of names is being folded in, it's introduced here, and then it will be picked up with I don't have the other list, but we can, so not to complete the skipper, we'll commentary on Saraswati, Nilaswati, Matangi, and those groups of names in the next verse. The first name, the last name in this verse, and then the names in the next verse will be common expansion of the term Vāṇī. But Vāṇī means voice, means words, articulate. I like the word articulation. I think it's kind of how it's meant here. Eloquence, Vāṇī, related to like Saraswati, and one of Saraswati's name is Vāṇī, right? So she who is language, who is speech, who is articulation. So we'll unfold that more next time. But how are we doing on time? We're doing very good. See, I'm plowing through. Vāṇī, Buddhi, Yadevi Sarvabhuteshu, Buddhi Rupena Samta. That's another one right in the list, right? You can see this is definitely pulled from the Chandi. Where are we? Buddhi. So Buddhi means intelligence. There's of course, she was Yadevi. One thing we should mention, because this is something I always, when I'm giving talks on those verses, when we're giving talks on the Chandi during Navaratri, on the Yadevi, what's that verse called? Not the Aparajita. What's the Apirajita Stuti? In the story, in the Chandi, the gods, long time back, they were saved by the Divine Mother. A Shakti, their own Shaktis came forward and saved them from Mahishasura, right? And so, again, they got a boon at the end of that, and they said, when next time, if a boon has to be given, Ma, and next time trouble comes, if we remember you with these verses, right? Anyone who remembers these verses, you come and end their suffering. So again, they're in trouble. Another demon has come up, a set of demons. This one is Shumba, Nishumba, and their large retinue of cohorts, right? Deeply psychologically significant set of demons, very subtle demons. But again, they came up, and so rather the first time they ran off to the Himalayas, and they ran off and started praying and to praying to Mahā. This time they went to a quiet place in the Himalayas, and they meditated. Yadevi, and these verses are verses of meditation. Yadevi, that goddess, who, because they saw Ma came from them and killed these. I mean, the Shakti of each one of them came and made this giant goddess, and made the Mahadevi and the Chandi. So this time they remembered, where we don't have to look outside for her. She's right. She's our own quality. She's our own Shakti. So they meditated, that goddess who exists in all beings, Yadevi Sarva Bhuteshu, and then began to mention all these different qualities. Buddhi Rupena Samtita, Kshanti Rupena Samtita, Tuṣṭiḥ Rupena Samtita, Mati Rupena Samtita, Trishna Rupena Samtita. I mean, name after, I think there's 26 or 27 names, something like that in the litany. And whenever we talk about these, we always point out exactly that the one goddess exists in all beings in different ways. Right, and so an example is our Guruji. I mentioned our Swami Bhajanananda Saraswati, our Boro Guruji, great saint. He had a unique language on his own. He learned English at age in his 80s. He learned English, late 70s, early 80s, by memorizing the dictionary. So it's a little different. He said, "I have mental energy. Other people learn English. I can learn English." So at old age, he learned English. So he had a very unique way of thinking, unique language, and he come from his own ways, without no education, from his own realization, his own thinking. But his own way of talking about God, his favorite word for God was some unseen power. That was his description. An unseen power is plain as, that was his, this is that Maha Shakti, this mysterious behind everything. And then he used examples. Just like, this is his version of Yadevi Sarva Bhuteshu. It's like electricity, just like electricity. It's very fine. You can't see it, right? But you see it by its manifestations, right? Like in the light bulb, it's light. In the mic, in the speaker system, it's sound. In the heater, it's in the geyser. His word, the geyser is in India. It's hot water. In the fridge, in the icebox, it's cold. In the fan, it's breeze, right? So it's the same electricity you can't see, but you can see it by all these different qualities. So similarly, this is describing in the Yadevi Sarva Bhuteshu verses, describing first Chaitanya Rupa in the form of consciousness, and all the other things are aspects of consciousness. Consciousness and all this. So consciousness is what's being glorified. Their own consciousness, the consciousness, and all these different forms in themselves and everything. So Shanti and Buddhi and Lajja and all these different qualities mentioned here, mentioned there. Every quality, even Bhranti Rupana, even confusion, right? Even hunger, error, all these things. Every manifestation of consciousness is her only. And so when they meditate on her, then she appears. And she appears in a very wonderful story where she, like, "Hey, what are you guys saying over there? Where are you guys praying to?" She has this lady taking her bath in the Himalayas, and she's awakened. It represents awakening of Kundalini, awakening of consciousness in the story. Right, but Buddhi, all these are just aspects of consciousness, or manifestations of consciousness, a better way to say it, right? And so we can see her, this little section shows that we can see her in everything, right? Everything, good, bad, and all of our desires, our frustrated desires, our misdirected desires, our good discipline, our bad discipline, everything, she is in every possible thing, right? And so Buddhi means intelligence. Intellect is probably the way we'd say it in English, but it doesn't mean intellect. The problem is that the Sankhya, it comes from it's formalized in Sankhya is one of the 24 evolutes, or 36 evolutes in the larger tantric series. But so I think intelligence is a better term than the intellect. It's not really although the intellect is the buddhi, the way we think of it, but the Indian system analyzes the mind differently. It comes to roughly the same, but it on the mind differently. So the intellect is a mental fact, an internal fact, a subtle faculty that discerns, right? That judges, that doubts, right? That determines, that reasons, wills, even and rejects, decides. So the mind may be taking in information, right, and the intellect analyzes the information and decides what's true, not true, in a certain sense, something like that. It's not exactly. I mean, we can give a whole class. There's a different class to give on the yogic interpretation of the antakarana, the internal organs of the mind, which are made of mind, manas, ahamkara. In the Gita, manas, ahamkara, and buddhi, right? The intellect, the mind, manas, and buddhi, and the ahamkara, the I sense. Those are the internal organs. They're not who we are, but they're manifestations of consciousness or the instruments of consciousness, material instruments. In the Yoga Sutra, then you add chitta to that, and there's some other things that even make less sense to the Western categories, but it can be just a different way of categorizing, right? So she's intelligence. So this is encouraging, I believe, proper use of intelligence, right? And there's a verse in the like we usually think, and often, and I'm of this school of thought generally, that the divine is the ineffable. It's not described. Thakur described. It's the one thing. God is the one thing that's never been. It's never a jut. It's like if something touches your mouth becomes unclean in Hindu culture, right? Right. God has never become unclean. It's never touched anybody's lips. Never been spoken. What God actually is. Although Thakur spent his whole life talking about God, he said he's never been. What God is cannot be spoken. It's beyond language. It's beyond thought. It's never been thought. Right, so in one sense, we use the term ineffable. Right, mystics are very famous for this type of. And there's negative theology, and there's a whole category of things of only knowing what God is by negatives, because any positive statement is going to be wrong. It's a different. This is a whole philosophical, theological thing, but we won't go fully into that because the Upanishads, interesting, don't say that. Right, the Upanishads say actually God. Brahman, which is by the Ramakrishna said that only Brahman knows Brahman. We can never know Brahman unless we're Brahman. And then he used the example of a salt doll going to the ocean to measure its depth. Right? It becomes eventually there's no by the time it reaches the ocean, there's no salt doll. There's only ocean, and therefore there's nobody to tell you how deep the ocean is. Right? So it's like only the ocean knows the depth of the ocean. We can never know the depth of the ocean in that sense, right? But there's a verse in the where are we here? In the I got the verse. I remember the verse, but not the source. I forget the Upanishad it's from. Esha sarveshu bhuteshu gudo atma na prakashyate drishyate triagraya buddhya sukshmaya shukshma darshibhihi. The Atman is hidden in all beings. Yadevi sarvabhuteshu. It's everywhere. And you can say, oh, we know it by its quality, but we're not catching it. By seeing buddhi, by seeing electricity, we're not really seeing electricity. We're seeing light, right? We know electricity is there because of light, but we're not seeing electricity. We're knowing consciousness. We know Brahman. We know the self. We know God, Ma. We know by everything, but we don't see her. Even though she's everything and showing herself and everything, she's subtle. We see grossly, right? So it says that the Atman is hidden, Guddho Sarvabhu, in all beings, right? Na prakashyate. It doesn't reveal itself. It's not shining, right? It's although everywhere, we don't see it, right? It's that's a very important idea, right? Drishyate, but he says, the seers, right? But it is seen by those whose buddhya shukshmaya, whose buddhis become very, very subtle. It can be caught. This is a big statement of the Upanishads. The Upanishads are a very positive form of mysticism, not a negative form of theology, not negative. It can be seen by shukshma darshibhi, buddhya shukshmaya, shukshma. It can be subtly seen by the very subtle mind, right? That subtle mind, this is the mind that the contemplation of things like the Upanishads and the disciplines given, the yogic and spiritual disciplines given, are designed to do. The mind can't. The self is subtler, the subtlest, but it can be seen if the buddhi has become subtle. Our instrument, with a blunt instrument, it can't be seen, right? But we're called to sharpen, make our instrument very subtle. Sattvic, through meditation, through study, through satsang, through all these practices to make the mind subtle, to know what to see, and we know how to see. And then maybe we could see, I mean, like the saints that tell you, oh, God can't be seen, right, are the ones who are tears streaming down their eyes as they see her, right? But they can't, but because she's not something to be seen, but she can be seen through the very subtle mind, right? That's the hope. This is the hope of our spiritual practices and our devotion, right? So that's a verse in the. I wish I wrote down. It says verse 12. I wish I wrote down what verse. I think it's the Kenya Upanishad, or no, maybe it's Katha. I remember. So where are we here? Buddhi. What's the verse so far? Okay. So I want to end it at this a little bit of discussion of this term Lakshmi, right? And really we could stop here and then next week do Lakshmi and Saraswati. I think Saraswati will hold its own. I think these qualities, Buddhi and Tuṣṭiḥ and Sunītiḥ and Suruciḥ, these are qualities of Lakshmi, right? And in Shaktism, when this is a Shakta text, so we're describing it from the Shakta perspective. The one being thinks within itself, herself, right? I am one, let me become many. And to become many, it becomes everything. And why? Out of its own delight. It says, right? There's not out of, usually we think, some people will critique this view of creation or of existence and saying, oh no, that is giving some limit. If Brahman creates, that means Brahman has a lack, and lack is a negative quality, and therefore Brahman is not absolute or not infinite. And they in theological and philosophical circles saying how this can't be, and therefore Brahman didn't create. That the conclusion is you didn't create, and there is nothing else, right? And therefore your experience of everything is wrong, because if it was right, Brahman would be incomplete, and therefore wouldn't be absolute, and you've denied God by your experience. So, but the problem is when you're every experience. I mean, we can maybe hold that. That's a very sophisticated. Actually, it is. I mean, I'm being a little bit. It's extremely complex. I've simplified it in not the most generous way, in order to illustrate my philosophy, which is slightly different, right? But it's actually a very sophisticated school of thought. Obviously, the classical Advaita argument. But it denies our experience, and so in Tantra, in Shaktism has a different view that Parinamavad, I think it's called, but that the one has become everything, and the argument is not out of sense of lack, out of its own nature. It's become everything because it's become everything. Not because it's lacking, not because it's imperfect, not because something made it and therefore there's a second thing to act upon it. It's its own, by its, in the Kashmiris, they say by its swatantriya, by its own intrinsic nature. Whatever the reason, here it is, right? Here she is as everything. Here it is, they are as everything. And they did it out of the overabundance of ananda, the welling up of bliss, right? And so the beauty, the pleasure, the tuṣṭiḥ and puṣṭiḥ and all these things are descriptions of Ma's expansion as everything. So we don't have much time for Lakshmi. We have 10 minutes. I shall describe Lakshmi in 10 minutes. And we'll back it up next time also. But because I think this is a good place to end, kind of culminate this discussion. So it says Mahā-lakṣmīḥ, Lakshmi. We'll start with Lakshmi and then Mahā-lakṣmīḥ. Mahā-lakṣmīḥ is, there's Lakshmi and it's like you have Devis, the goddesses, right? And then we consider them aspect of the Maha Devi, right? The great goddess, the original goddess, right? They're all, So this idea of Mahā-lakṣmīḥ, another name for Mahā-lakṣmīḥ is Adi-Lakshmi. So Adi-Lakshmi means the first, but doesn't mean the first. It means like the first amongst all the Lakshmis. It's the first before everything, the primordial. So Mahā-lakṣmīḥ or Adi-Lakshmi is a name of not just of the goddess of prosperity and happiness, right? Who holds the lotus, and sits on a lotus and gives boons and the merit to Vishnu, the normal way we think of goddess Lakshmi. Mahā-lakṣmīḥ is the supreme absolute truth that gives birth to before everything and is everything. That Mahadevi is Mahā-lakṣmīḥ. She has her own way of meditating on her own stories like that, but that's Mahā-lakṣmīḥ is her as the Parashakti, the Adya Devi Parashakti, right? But Lakshmi we can think. So what does Lakshmi mean, right? So we actually get the English word, some think, lucky from Lakshmi, right? To give it, so it means, it's come to mean good fortune, Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. We are obviously the goddess of fortune. And fortune means, like we say, oh, you come into a fortune means money and wealth. But fortune also means you become lucky and successful, and things are going your way. Or you're very a lot of benign opportunity for you opening up to you. You become fortunate. So it has both these meanings. So she's often seen as the goddess of wealth, the goddess of fortune, like that. Both these meanings. So Lakshmi, Laksh, and we have to think, what is? Anybody know what Lakshmi literally means? What the word means? Where it comes from? Laksh or Laksha. It means like to perceive, right? It also means goal. It also means mark. Like we have Lakshana is one term. Lakshana is like there's a verse, I've spoken on it many times. I have it memorized. I didn't think about it, so it's not fresh in my mind. But it means that when Brahman is to be worshipped, a Lakshana is attributed to it. A thought, a form, a name. We can't think of the infinite. If we give it a form or a name, or we can say it reveals a name or form for us to think about it. So like that similar type of thing. It's like a mark, a form, an indicator, a symbol, right? But it also comes to mean the goal of something. And then when you join these two ideas, it becomes to understand what the goal of one's goal is. Lakshmi. So the words come from this kind of combination of things, right? So it becomes like some translations, actually the translation I was looking at earlier, which is not my favorite, but it says Lakshmi. It's not like you say, oh, the goddess of good fortune. That's how I would translate it, right? Like the goddess of she who knows the goal or something, because it uses that view of the goal is, I mean, you can see that's what real fortune is, knowing your goal and understanding they're going towards the goal. You can see it like that, right? Symbol, attribute, target, sign, quality, mark, auspicious opportunity, all these. There's no one word. I mean, there is one word called Lakshmi. And there's no one English word. There's a really good Sanskrit word for it, Lakshmi. So, right. In the Rig Veda, there's of course we have the Sri Shuktam, but the word Lakshmi is given, right? And there it's not so much the name of the goddess, right? It's used a little more technically in this sense. It's as a kindred mark or sign of our. It's not just auspicious fortune. It's the mark or sign of auspicious fortune, right? So it's something. So you can see where the ideas are together, right? Bhadra Braishayam Lakshmi Nītiḥ Adi Vachihi. An auspicious fortune is attached to their words. That's a line in the Vedas, the Rig Veda, that their words mean something, a good fortune, something like that. So all of you, I mean, Lakshmi is a very known goddess, right? They don't have to say, Lakshmi is a goddess of fortune. She's married to Vishnu. We all know, everybody here knows that, and it's part of popular Hinduism, part of mainstream Hinduism, universally worshipped, literally universally worshipped. The most popular, Ganesha and Lakshmi are the most worshipped in a certain sense, right? But we can try to give a little different angle to a discussion on Lakshmi. One of the things mentioned in early texts, and one of her qualities is chanchala, is that she's, what's that mean? Fickle, maybe that's the word. Unsteady or shaky or fickle, right? And so, in a lot of there's so many Puranic stories and the Tantras and the Puranas, in the Mahabharata, stories of Lakshmi and how she came. So I have a lot of them dancing in my mind as I'm thinking about. I told this story, but I won't tell many of these stories. But a theme in a lot of these stories is that some people invoke her and she comes and then she leaves in all the stories. Like for one time, Lakshmi was originally a goddess of the demons, right? She was in the demon world, but the demons, their nature is harsh and ugly, right, and crude, and she doesn't like that, and so she left, and so she went to Indraloka. She hung out with Indra, but Indra, in all the stories we know, Indra is selfish. He's greedy. The gods are, they're like that, and so she doesn't like it, and she leaves. So there's so many stories like that where she's moving that she's very, it's very hard. She'll come if you ask her, she'll come carefully, but she doesn't stay, right? And we've all noticed this. We have times where great fortune comes, and then it goes. Right, we get good health and then bad health. We get a success and then failure. We get some fame and then our reputation goes down. Right, this is the way she is. Right, and there's many stories that describe this. But even there's one. Let me see if I have. Well, I have so many. There's one in the Bhagavatam, since the Bhagavatam is kind of our specialty. Remember the churn of the ocean, that ancient story. We spent a lot of time on this story. It says that Lakshmi, she was with the gods, right? First she was a demon, then she was the gods, and the gods upset her, and she disappeared into the ocean, into the cosmic ocean, right? And there was a whole reason for the Bhagavatam gives all kinds of backstories of why that is, why it had to be, right? But how did she, in that version, when did she leave the gods? So, this was orchestrated by the demon, by both gods and demons. They orchestrated this particular thing to get the nectar. They had to start a whole series of events in the story. But there was Indra who had Lakshmi as one of his living in heaven, right? So the demons knew, or the gods knew, we have to get Lakshmi to leave heaven, to leave the gods, because if the gods lose Lakshmi, then the demons will get the upper hand, and if the demons get the upper hand, then they'll have to make a truce with the gods and churn the ocean to get the nectar. This is a very complicated political. We have a whole thing going on right now in politics. That's nothing. What's going on in Congress right now? Nothing compared to the upper world and the cosmic world. The politics that have to go on to get Amrita. Is a legitimate goal of both gods and demons. So they convince Durvasa. Durvasa is the angry one, right? Durvasa. He's angry because all he eats is wheatgrass. Yeah, I feel the same way. 1 week fast on wheatgrass. I'm just the same as him. He only eats grass, right? But he was an ordinary nature. So they gave him. It says, there's this garland that is from maybe from Shiva or from Vishnu, right? Give it to Indra, right? Because he needs the blessings of Vishnu in order to do his job. That sounds very, very good. So he takes his garland and he finds Indra, and Indra's on his Arivata, the elephant, I think, is the name of the elephant. And he goes, Indra, I'm giving you blessings by Lord Vishnu. I'm giving you this prashad garland, this Vanamala. And so he gives it to, and Indra, there's this like half-naked, angry, dreadlock sage, right? He's, you give minimum respect, but he's at that time in a very puffed up stage, walking on his elephant, which represents pride and royal pomp, right? And so he takes it, and he doesn't give proper respect to it. And a garland of the deities has to be given very proper respect. It can actually liberate you. A flower from the deity can be worshipped from the even a flower from a sage. Actually, we bury saints and we do samadhis for them. But if you have a flower from a garland, that flower you can build a samadhi called pushpa samadhi, because they're the same as if their body is there. So the garland is considered very, very sacred, right? Garland from the deity, garland from a saint. This is a garland from a deity and a saint, given by Durvasa. But he does. So he throws it and puts it on his elephants. Puts it on the elephant. But an elephant doesn't know what's what, right? So the elephant knocks it down and keeps walking and tramples on it. And that's what the gods and the demons are trying to do. Or the gods are trying to do, right? Or somehow I forget that. And so he gets very upset. May Lakshmi leave you. That was his curse. In other words, may bad luck come to you. You've been in control for too long. Look what the ego has come to you. All this pomp and you've become so egotistical. You don't even know how to respect the sadhu, how to respect prasadam. You don't deserve Lakshmi. And by saying may Lakshmi come, may Lakshmi leave you, it may not be like literally may Goddess Lakshmi leave heaven and disappear from you, but it meant like that. So favor is no longer on the god's side, and now Lakshmi left into the ocean, and the demons took, that was their side. They got the upper hand, and then this deal have to be done between the gods and the demons in order to churn. So this is an example of this fickle nature of Lakshmi, right? In that story, as they churn, all kinds of things come up. There's different, Bhagavatam, I think it was 18 things or maybe more things that come up. The divine elephant comes out, and the horse comes out, and the cow comes out, and ghee comes out, and all these alcohol comes out. All these different things come out, and they're given, as things come out of the ocean, they're given to different, these are given to the demons, these are given to the gods, like this. And I think the penultimate thing before the Amrita comes out, I think Lakshmi comes out. If not the penultimate, close to that. She comes out dressed in red, beautiful red sari and gold. And you can see, often we dress, like the equivalent of today, like Banarasi sari, red. Ma's often, right now she's in blue, but often we dress Ma in 90% of the time she's wearing a red Banarasi sari, right? Because that Lakshmi kind of quality of the Shakti and the primordial and opulence sitting on a red flower. Right, and she comes out, and all of a sudden, see, the gods have had her before on her side, and the demons have had her before, right? They both know the benefit of having luck on your side, prosperity, good fortune. They've all lost their fortune. That's why they're having to like compromise with the other side, right, in order to do this, right? Unheard of. They don't like, gods and demons don't like compromising with gods and demons. So. Like I said, it's much deeper than even our political system. It's like really bad, They're gods and demons, So when she comes up, and so they all like, oh, we'll marry you. Come to us, right? Who's she going to marry? This is the idea of who's she going to come to. But she's already said, no. The gods are every god wants her too much, right? They'll misuse me. They're selfish. They don't deserve. I don't like to be around them. I don't like them, And the demons, same thing, even less. I don't like them. I left them for a reason. They haven't changed their nature, right? And so, and they're looking, but there's one person, the whole thing, that's completely indifferent. Vishnu is simply there. He's not after Lakshmi. And so she thinks to herself, the person who doesn't want me, that's the person I'll be with. And so she says she took her pushpamala, her vanamala, and put it on Vishnu, and then Vishnu said, okay, I accept you as my wife. You'll always live in my heart, on my chest, and you'll never be separated from me. There's a verse like that, right? And so that's also interesting, that she is fickle, but she's always with Vishnu. This is the thing, right? And so this is one of the things that the way we worship Lakshmi, the way we keep Lakshmi, right, is we can't do anything that upsets her, and she's easily upset. She'll leave at the slightest disrespect, the slightest mess, the slightest ugliness, harsh sound, harsh words. She leaves. Disrespect towards anybody, she leaves. Scripture says, and there's so many stories like this, but she doesn't leave where Vishnu is. Where Vishnu is. So you can say, oh, well, that means that now she's with the Vaishnavas. Not like that. Although it's partially like that too. But where Vishnu is, where people worship God, right? Where people worship the in a pure and sattvic way, right? She'll always be there, right? She's always serving Vishnu. And therefore, we should always, if we're meditating on Vishnu, she's always with Vishnu. Everywhere else she leaves. She doesn't stay. She comes and goes. But she's always with Vishnu. So if you have Vishnu, you always have her. But you have to have Vishnu, not her. If you worship Vishnu, if you worship God, Lakshmi will be with you. If you worship Lakshmi, she comes and goes. That's the point. Because that's her nature, always coming and going. Right? Even, Gomata, the mother cow, has in her body 33 million gods. We have a picture, right? That we not all 33. We have a lot of them out in by Hanuman. We have a picture of the mother cow. But Lakshmi is not in her, right? Because there's a story when all the gods there's a story in the Mahabharata, all the gods took refuge in the body, wanted to live in the body of the cow as such a divine being, right? And Lakshmi also, I want to be in your body. And the cow said, no. I'm steady. Cow is steady. You're fickle. You have no place in me. Lakshmi, everyone wants Lakshmi. And now you remember when Vishnu didn't want her, he wanted. So now his special, she really wants to be with the cow, right? And you can see a lot of people's like our first cow at our ashram is named Lakshmi. I mean, she's so associated with the cow, right? But so a deal was in that she will exist not in the body of the cow, but in the part of the cow that's leaving the body. So she exists in the stool and the urine and milk of a cow. The things that come from a cow, that's Lakshmi, right? Not in because the cow is steady. The part of the cow that's leaving, that's Lakshmi. And you can see, cow dung brings nourishment and fertility. Cow urine is an antiseptic and cleaning. Cow milk and ghee and these things are nourishing. So that you can see it's a beautiful way of describing how the cow, not the cow, the products of the cow is Lakshmi to those who, if she's worshipped, if she's respected, right? And you can see even, for the worship of Vishnu, the products of a cow are necessary. So she's always with Vishnu, and you can see it's all kind of connected to these type of things, right? In the Devi Bhagavatam, which is one of my favorite Shakta texts, we know that we've all heard the story of Brahma. Vishnu lies, Ananta Shesha, the infinite, the serpent is lying on the causal ocean, Karana Saga, the Kshira Saga, the ocean of milk, the ocean of causality, ocean of existence. On top, laying on him is Lord Vishnu, who represents spirit consciousness. From the navel Lord Vishnu comes Lord Brahma. Right, I'm definitely in the wrong place. I keep doing that. I thought this would be a good place. It's not a good place. I have to adjust it next time. And then Shiva is said to come from the head of Lord Brahma, the top of Brahma's head in this story, right? So Nanta, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. They're all, it's like, okay, now we have a simple answers, where Brahma comes from where Vishnu comes from Ananta, where does Shiva come from? You can give answers like that. But where is Ananta again? Oh, he's in the cosmic ocean. Where is that ocean again? Right. It's interesting that Ma jumped into the ocean for a reason, right? She said that the text says that ocean exists the ocean of existence exists in the womb of the Divine Mother. But here it says Adi Lakshmi. This Mahā-lakṣmīḥ, Lakshmi here described, because it's not just the Divine Mother in general, Lakshmi as in the one from whom everything is, the mother who's giving birth to everything, as through the ocean, Ananta, Vishnu, Brahma, Shiva, and then by extension, Ananda and Durgadasi and we work like this, like that. So she is a ground of being as Mahā-lakṣmīḥ, Adi Lakshmi. So she's associated with that also. So I think we shall end here. Let's see. There's a connect there. You maybe have heard of this Ashtalakshmi. You probably have heard. Just like there's Navadurgas and Ashtamatrik. Navadurgas here. We have the Dash Mahavidyas here. We have the Ashtamatrikas or the Saptamatrikas, and all these. There's clusters of form. Dash avatars, the ten incarnations of Vishnu. So similarly, Lakshmi is seen as she manifests. As everything that's glorious and wonderful in life, she manifests. We need Lakshmi, right? We need her grace. We need her fortune, and she appears in 8 forms called the Ashtalakshmi. And there's a couple different lists. They're mostly the same. I'll just go through the 2 different lists just for completion because we don't usually think of them. There's Bhagya Lakshmi. Bhagya means good fortune, right? Dhana Lakshmi means wealth. Dhanya Lakshmi means grains, means food, and there's Gaja Lakshmi. Gaja means elephant. So this is a symbol of both of like royal power and lordship, but also of rains and that type of thing. Santana Lakshmi, Santana as in like Sanatana Dharma, something similar. So that's interesting. But it's not like how do you live forever through children. So she gives offspring, right? That's a way of like the way you are eternal. The fact is we're not. I mean, the soul may be whatever the soul is. That may be eternal, right? This is a complicated thing in any text to describe, but the way we are eternal in this world is by our children and descendants, right? So she's Santana Lakshmi, Vada Lakshmi, that gives boons, fulfills our requests. Vidya Lakshmi gives knowledge. She is the wealth of knowledge, also known in the next name as Saraswati, right? Vidya Lakshmi becomes Saraswati, right? And Virya Lakshmi, that would give strength and power, like this, right? Another version is Adi Lakshmi. Adi is the original. Then Danya, Virya, Gajja, Santana, Vijaya, Supreme Victory, Ashwarya. There's different lists, but then we need actually all these things in order to be successful in life, right? In the Chandi, where do we have here? I thought I read it. Maybe I didn't write it down. Oh yeah, and two things in the Durga Stuti, it says that Lakshmi always comes with buddhi and laja, with modesty or humility. These are qualities that attract her, and intelligence, subtle intelligence. In the Shakrari Stuti, the Chandi, when after Mahishasura was killed, Indra and the other gods did a beautiful prayer, a very powerful prayer, and where it says, "You are Lakshmi, or good fortune, in the house of the virtuous." So these are ways that how to get Lakshmi is by morality, by virtue, by good behavior. These are the things that bring Lakshmi. And interesting, in all the stories where people get greedy, Lakshmi leaves. You see, so Lakshmi is not the same as money, because people get greedy, they have more money sometimes, right? But not Lakshmi. It's not good. Sometimes you can see money is not always good fortune, right? So we want fortune, not money. But if we're greedy, if we hold on to it, if we try to control her, disrespect her, respect and her forms, which is Ya Devi and all Sarva Bhutashu and all beings, right? She leaves, and there's many stories like that where she's disrespected, she leaves. And there's many ways to disrespect her, right? In the scripture, I'll just quote scripture after scripture. When the wife is disrespected, she leaves the house, right? And you can see as soon as the wife is disrespected, the marriage may continue, but peace, good fortune leaves, right? Where women are disrespected, where when anybody is disrespected, disrespect is Alakshmi, right? And where things are dirty, things are messy. These are Lakshmi. Where things are dusty. One of the in the Sri Shuktam, Lakshmi has a sister, Alakshmi. And we want Lakshmi to come and Alakshmi to go. But they always come they're connected. They have to be careful, right? And so cleanliness is Lakshmi. Dust, one of the names for dust in the scriptures is Alakshmi. Right? Sri Ramakrishna thought, he saw somebody with a ripped cloth, right? He said, oh, no, that's Alakshmi. It could bring poverty. Or if he saw the house was dark, keep a light on. A dark house is Alakshmi. It could bring poverty. Right, he would talk chakras say like this. He didn't light it. You can see, and so in traditional Hindu culture, at sunset, it's still in many homes it's done like this. You light a lamp, right? Maybe you don't have lit. I mean, we have, it took 3 months to redo our lighting. Very complicated. We have very good lighting here, right? To stop it. But actually, even if you can't afford to light up everything, you should have light in your house. There shouldn't be. Growing up, I see this is not longer the thing. Growing up, we always had the porch light on at night, and we turned it off. And not like I see people, when the last person comes home, you turn off the porch light, right? No, we turn out in the morning. We turn off the porch light. The house should always be lit up. Even here, we don't do that. We don't want to waste electricity, right? But growing up, that was a porch. It was part of it. You can see it brings safety and it's a sign of poverty. It brings poverty. Thakur said, right? So this is the thing. So and then we also have the Griha Lakshmi. The Lakshmi in the house is the wife, or the mother of the house. The lady of the house is Lakshmi. And you can see, because this is a traditional Indian way, we have to adjust to the whatever situation. The Griha Lakshmi not only is Lakshmi, and in an Indian wedding, you dress the wife as Lakshmi. A red sari was gold, right? And she is, and she's carried into the house. There's all these symbols of rice and all these stepping on her. All these things are ways of invoking Lakshmi, right? And she is the embodiment of Lakshmi, and she usually in the Indian traditional, idealistic traditional culture, all the things that keep Lakshmi in the house, she's in charge of, like the lamp, food, children. Because these things, obviously, we all have to bring Lakshmi into the house. Whatever, however we organize our life and organize our home, Lakshmi has to be invoked. And then, of course, some simple things. We have special pujas for Lakshmi throughout the year during Diwali and like this. These are all things about light. Also, charity brings Lakshmi. Generosity brings Lakshmi. Tulsi's presence in the home. There's almost no Hindu home without Tulsi in the front. There shouldn't be a Hindu home without Tulsi in the front, right? Tulsi is Lakshmi's presence. The lamp is Lakshmi's presence, like this. We don't also, like, not to disrespect food. Lakshmi is rice is Lakshmi, right? During Durga Puja, we have one of the ghats. It's not a part of the Durga Puja. We have a ghat full of rice. We worship Lakshmi just as a pot of rice. That is Lakshmi. And then that rice is then, after being worshipped, we put it into our rice, and people can take it home, add it to their rice at home. That the rice becomes Lakshmi, like this, right? So not respect. You'll see even rice, especially. There's stories of like Srila Prabhupada would do this. There's a Ramana Maharishi bending down one grain of rice in the wrong place. You wash it off, put it back. Rice is Lakshmi, can't be disrespected. To waste food is Lakshmi, right? So, anyways, like this. This is how we're presenting. So we'll end there and then next week, God willing, we'll start Nila Saraswati in this group of Matangi, very nice group of names, which actually, my original notes for today, I always thought, I'll totally get to the second verse, and I want to talk about Saraswati, right? And also, we just did a big Saraswati puja, so we have Saraswati in our mind right now. So we're excited to speak about her, but I'm glad we'll leave that to give it its own proper time. Any questions or comments? We're a little late, but this is good stuff. Thinking of Ma is always good. No questions, no comments. Good. No question, the comments is Lakshmi. Good. Means everybody understands everything and agrees. Jai Ma. Hari Om Tat Sat.